We didn't get anything this year. That means it's going to be a harsh winter. We didn't get anything this year.
All right, we are live on YouTube and want to welcome everybody here to Triple T, Talk Time with TJ number 44 on November 1st, 2022. Who'd have thunk we would have gotten this far? Yahoo! Those of you that are watching the recording and have no idea who I am, my name is TJ Ziebill. I refer to myself as a professional problem solver with lots of wallpaper in the background, which doesn't really mean a whole lot unless you can do something with it. So this is Triple T. We are broadcasting live and recording. So for those of you that pop in and out, you can watch the recordings. For those of you that are watching the recordings, do me a favor and click the subscribe and the like and the ding dong bell and leave comments and all that good stuff that goes along with YouTube. But as I like to start off all of these, I like to ask those that have joined in early, any ahas, epiphanies, great moments from the week or the last time we got to spend time together that you'd like to share? Anybody? I missed last week because the wife and I finally got a chance to get off of the property. Much needed. I've been going full throttle, on top of full throttle, doing a full remodel on the apartment in the shop and all of the stuff that goes along with that. So if any of you have gone through a full remodel job, my sympathies. Although I have to admit it in the strange way, of course, I'm enjoying it because a lot of it's work that I did in the past as a profession, one of my 28 professions that have gotten me here today. It was also a wonderful reminder of why it's a past profession and how happy I am to have moved on, forward, however you want to describe it. Any questions or stories that any of you would like to share on that kind of a... By the way, for those of you that have joined, I appreciate it. I got a number of texts today. We're going to be a little light tonight. We got some people that are traveling. We got some that have other commitments. So for those of you that made it, thank you. Otherwise, I would be talking to myself and the camera. Not that I haven't done that before, but yeah, you know.
Well,
Uh-oh. You froze up out in the tundra. I know where. Yep, you froze up. Either that or you got a phone call. We're here.
I'm doing, speaking on the remodeling, I'm doing changing out a garbage disposal and a hose to my dishwasher, and so, and it's intimidating for sure, but I'm gonna get a new everything again. And you were helping me out this morning about telling me which brand, and so I found it at Home Depot, and I'm gonna go get it tomorrow morning and start my adventure of redoing the pipes. And
awesome. And I'm so proud of you And here's the cool thing. Can you imagine what this would have been like trying to, for anybody, regardless of gender or experience or anything, trying to do this in the 70s or the 80s or even the 90s? I mean, yes, you had a phone, but long distance calls were, anything out of a 5 mile radius. And for those of you that are watching this and you're like, long distance call, yeah, you were probably born after a certain date. Those of us born before that certain date understand the whole concept of long distance calling and parental units losing their mind if they found out that you had a friend who, of course, lived just outside of the long distance range. And where I grew up, if you're watching and you know where I grew up and you get a little bummed out about what I'm about to say, you probably knew me, but you didn't get a chance to spend a whole, because where I grew up, where I went to school, and most of my friends were, I was about a mile and a half outside of the long distance call zone to that area. That's it. And the in-call zone went like 20 miles that way to nothingness farmland. So you had probably 400 people this way and about 3,000 people this way that were a mile and a half. So I actually used to ride over to a friend of mine's place on my bicycle so I could use his phone to call my girlfriend. You do what you got to do. But back to the squirrel that ran across the street that I caught. In this day and age, with access to YouTube, being able to cell phone anybody pretty much on the planet where some charges may arise. But you've got Skype, you've got FaceTime, you've got YouTube, you've got all of these things that allow you to do things that were much, much, much harder back in the day. The Kenmore repairman had to know his stuff. And if he didn't know it, he had to know where to buy the manuals to be able to look it up, yes, in a book, to figure out the parts that he would have to call a number and drive to, because it was never Amazoned to his place, to fix it. So kudos to you for going, you know what? I got access to the knowledge, I've got access to the parts, I've got a healthy body, I've got a smart mind, I'll figure this out. And then you look at all the famous people that Henry Ford, when he designed the whole assembly line program, and his competitors were not happy because he was getting a little too successful, kicking our butt. They called him in for, I don't remember if it was Senate or Congress or whatever, some hearing. And of course, they were like, well, fine then, Mr. Ford, what is the compression ratio in the motors that you are building? And he's like, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You're building these cars, you're selling these cars. And he goes, I don't have to know. I know how to find the people that know what I don't know to do the things that I can't do. Einstein, it's been refuted or questioned a couple of times, but it's still a great quote, where he was asked, by the way, what's your phone number? And he's like, I don't know. You don't know your own phone number? He's like, it's in the phone book right there. I know how to look it up. I don't have to pollute my brain with stuff that I can look up. I've got other things that my brain needs to do. So, thank you for that, squirrel. Hope you enjoyed it. Anybody else want to toss me any squirrels before we get to the stuff that I came up with tonight? I just realized.
Props to Ray. I don't think I could have the bravery to do that. I would be too afraid of the rip roaring chaos that I would actually result in. So, girl, power to you. And that is awesome. Let me know how it goes.
Most definitely, I will let you know. I live in Wyoming. If you're not able to do your own stuff, then you're not going to be able to have it.
Quite accurate.
Out here, you live in the middle of nowhere. So, still the Old West.
And the cool part about that is I grew up in farmland, Minnesota. Yes, and the farmers, they learned how to fix anything and everything because you had to. Not only because trying to find somebody else that knew how to do it could be a challenge, but they cost money. And trying to get them over to your place to fix the tractor when it's harvest season, no. You had to get her done. And unfortunately, as a professional handyman for many years, we're a dying breed in a quick hurry. And some of the ones that are taking our place, yeah, good luck. I've seen some of their work. I've redone a lot of their work. A lot of their work. In fact, the contractor that I hired to help me out with the apartment, because it was one of those where, could I do everything we've been doing? Yeah. Have I done painting, taping, texturing enough to do it as well as somebody who's been doing it nonstop for a living for how long? Probably not. How long would it have taken me to do what they did in 3 weeks? Probably about 9 months. Oh, look at there. Somebody's joining us. But the reason that I bring that, you made it. The reason that I brought that up is, even though I didn't need them to help me, I had the access to it. And the funny part is, they offered me a job, and I'm like, apparently I'm one of the few homeowners that hired them that when I said, I know how to do most of this stuff, I just need help, I actually meant, I know how to do most of this stuff, I just need help. And I knew exactly what they were saying when they said that, because I've worked with a few of those. Well, I know how to do this stuff. I bought a hammer about 6 months ago. It was on sale after Christmas special. So I bought a hammer and a pliers and a screwdriver. And I looked something up on YouTube. So, and that's 14 minutes of chasing squirrels and having fun, and I appreciate that, because I do enjoy getting that message out. And I was recently asked by somebody to start up my videos. I actually had started a channel on Facebook called TSWB Talks, where I started doing short training videos of maintenance and things that can be done around the house. And another thing that I did was I was working with realtors, and when somebody would buy a house, I would offer to train them, teach them about their property. I'm like, you just bought a huge machine with a lot of working parts. And before you are allowed to drive a vehicle on the road, you have to take a class. But if you got money, you can buy a big house. No class. No, here you go. And I've even done the class for some people that have lived in their house for a number of years. And I said, okay, boom, you broke a water line in your house. It's pumping out 10 gallons a second. What are you going to do? Time's running. How do you stop it? Where's the shut off? Can you get there? It's the middle of the night. It woke you up. It's 3 a.m. You're half asleep. Water's flowing. Where are you going? What are you going to do? And the number of people that had no idea. They have never located the water shut off to their residence. They've never tested it. So I was like, this would be a good thing to know. Or you're in the house and all of a sudden you're like, that smells like gas. Well, where are your gas appliances? Well, there's the stove. What else? I don't know. Water heater? Furnace? Where's your gas shut off? Oreo. Or simply teaching them how to properly reset breakers in the electrical panel. The number of people that are living in properties that A, don't know where the electrical panel is located, B, have no idea how to reset the breaker. These are all things, those are the 3 main things that you should know so well that you can get woke up at 3 a.m. and be able to stumble there half asleep and take care of the issue. And then I cover other things like how to clean out plugged sinks, plugged toilets, because that never happens. And ironically, the number 1 tool for cleaning out a plugged sink, shop vac. Because everything plugs it up going this direction, and then people think that they've got to use a plunger to pack it in tighter, or they go to chemicals. I'll just pour some Drano down there. Oh, that didn't work. So I just pour some more Drano down there. Yeah, that still didn't work. And then they call someone like me, and first thing I ask them, have you put any Drano down there? Yeah? Why? Now I have to deal with pipes full of acid that if I get it in my eyes or on my hands, not so good. So I'm going to have to charge you more because it's a hazard for me. Well, why do you have to charge me more? Okay, I'll stand in the other room and I'll tell you what to do. Would that be okay? Well, yeah. And for those of you that are Drano lovers, I'm sorry. Learn how to maintain the pipes. Yes, go ahead, Ray.
Well, not just also maintaining the pipes, but also if the natural way of being able to get some of that grime and things like that off the pipe is baking soda, distilled white vinegar, and hot water.
Yeah, what a concept. And as long as we got grime on the pipes, how many of you have heard the fallacy of you can pour grease down the drain as long as you're running hot water? Not a good idea. Not a good idea. Remember, I took care of college rental homes for 15 years, and them educated little terrorists. Yes, I said it. If you've got one living there, could be one of yours. They argued with me. I literally caught one pouring bacon grease, a huge amount, down the drain with the hot water on. He's like, "Well, it's hot water, and the grease is it'll go right down." I said, "Okay, Sparky, let me share something with you. You can do that. All you have to do is run water that is right, like just a degree below boiling, down the drain long enough to heat the pipes, which are underground, from the house all the way down to the main of the city and a little farther beyond that. So as long as you can run nearly boiling water for about 6 hours, you might be able to pour grease along with it. It'll carry it long enough and disperse it long enough to not build up." And of course, he gives me this look of whatever. I'm like, no, the reason I'm here is because y'all are having slow drains. So as long as you're here, we're going to keep the water running for a bit. And then I'm going to pull the P-trap out. What I did, out of a pipe this big, it had an opening this big, and it was plugged with grease. Sparky got to pay my bill. And he was not happy, but he could not argue because I was like, "God, guess where this white grease came from, homeboy?"
Well, and a lot of people don't, this day and age, don't realize that back in the day, we used to have a coffee can or anything like that to hold bacon grease. Well, now they're making ceramic bacon grease or any kind of grease thing that you fill from your pans or anything like that. They're now ceramic and it says grease on it.
Yeah, great for cooking with. Yes, if you're a cardiologist, I understand. Don't drink it solid for 24/7. But animal fat has been proven to be beneficial when taken in moderation because our bodies need actual healthy fat, because this gray matter up here is a good combination of water and fat. So feel free to comment on that. This should be fun.
Carnivore diet is delicious. And thank you for the education. I may or may not have been a Drano user. I will not state this on this platform, but I appreciate the input, everyone.
Yes, please don't use Drano. Please don't. No. One of the best things that you can do is hire a plumber and have your pipes jetted. Jetting is basically a pressure washer on a hose that goes down the pipes and pressure washes the pipes clean. And if you're living in an area that still has cast iron, could be a little bit of a challenge because the jetting will actually clean all of the gunk out of the crevices, which creates an environment of peaks and valleys and spikes inside of the cast iron. So you have to be very careful, especially for those of you who have more hair than I do, to use hair traps. And there's all sorts of great little inventions now for capturing hair before it goes down the drain. So utilize that technology so that you don't have to call a plumber to pull out a hair snake. That will make most people gag, except for those of us who have dealt with it over and over and over and over again. But if you have a newer house with PVC or plastic piping, getting the pipes jetted, great way to make it drain well. Every now and then, fill the sink up to the top, good hot water, hit the drain and let it flow down and keep the pipes clean. For those of you that are washing dishes, those that know me know that I absolutely detest dish rinsers because I've worked on them. Most people that work on dish rinsers will not use them because we like clean dishes. They do have some tablets that you can put in there every now and then to try to keep the sludge in the pump well to a minimum. I know I'm going to make some of you disgusted and possibly sick at the moment, but you got to understand there is a portion of water that never leaves the dish rinser. It sits down in the pump well. So it's the equivalent of taking a bath, draining about 90% of the water, and then when it's time to take a bath, adding fresh water to the water that's been sitting there since the last time you took a bath, taking a bath and then draining 90% of the water and letting that sit till the next time you want to take a bath and adding water to that, and just repeat on and on and on. This is coming from a person who absolutely hated, did I mention hated, doing dishes when I was a kid. Worst punishment ever. Yes, I was the dumb one who, if I got in trouble, which never happened, or maybe once or twice a week, anyhow, if I was given the option in the dead heat of summer to mow our 1.5-acre lot in the city with a push mower during the dead of day or washing dishes, guess which one this brilliant person took? Yes, I would mow the lawn because I hated washing dishes. Until a good friend of mine's sister straightened both of us out, because my friend detested washing dishes by hand as much as I did. And she had both sides of the sink magically stacked in a beautiful mountain of evidence of her love for washing dishes. And her sister came over and they were going to go out, and her sister goes, "We are not leaving until you wash them frickin' dishes." And she was like, "It'll take forever! Oh my gosh!" And her sister said, "I'm going to teach you how to do it, and then I'm going to time you." So here is the amazing, oh my gosh, if I'd have known this when I was a kid, I would not have mowed nearly as much as I had to. If you have a sink disposal, that's the side you're going to wash on. And you fill it up with about that much hot soapy water, and you put in enough soap to last for the whole thing. Usually I put it right on the sponge. And you put what is going to fit inside of the water. So your knives and forks and spoons and all of that stuff. And you can, if I've also learned, I will pre-stack the items in the sink. And if I have dishes or bowls, stack them up, and I put the utensils in there. And you turn on the hot water until it fills that up enough to cover. And then if you have ADD like I do, you let the hot water and soap do what it's designed to do, and you go wipe off something in the kitchen. Wipe off a counter while the hot water and soap does its thing on the knives and forks. You come back and you scrub them off, and then you rinse into the same side. So you're rinsing over the dishes, which is taking all of the soap off of the stuff you just washed, adding that back to what's inside of the sink. Put them down. Then you let ADD kick back in, and you go back and you wipe off another little part, and then you come back and you do what's been soaking at that point. And the water keeps rising. And by the time you get to the pots and pans and the big stuff, you have a full sink of hot soapy water. And in between, once you've wiped off counters, you hand dry the stuff that you've washed, which two things. One, it allows you for inspection on your work of washing. It also allows you to wipe it off right away and put it away to make room for the next load of stuff that'll be coming in. And you would be amazed, by the time you get done washing a huge amount of dishes, you've actually used less water than the dish rinser will use. Your dishes are done, wiped, and put away. And you know that they're clean because they've been rinsed with clean water, clean fresh water. And now, if you have a sink disposal and you've checked to make sure you don't have any hidden spoons or small items, you pull the drain and you flip the power switch on the disposal, making sure that you apply pressure to the plug on the other side of the sink so that you don't have a beautiful fountain to share with the world. And what that does is it slams all the water through the P-trap, through the pipes and down to the main, keeping them squeaky clean. Ta-da! And you've used, I would say, probably a 60th or maybe a 100th of the electricity and probably half the water. And for those of you that want to challenge me on this because you believed the advertisements of new Maytag washer, save yourself 3,000 gallons a year by using this utensil. Well, they're saving you $3,000 or 3,000 gallons a year because they're rating it on the person who sets all of the dishes here, and they've got the little scrubby wand that holds soap in it, and they turn on the water and let the water run while they do their little scrubby rinse. Drain is wide open and scrubby rinse. And yes, so that's my little rant from professional experience, and I've had to do this many, many times, and I've surprised many, many people where I've fed 6 people, had all the pots and pans, all the dishes, all the utensils, everything, and I washed all of them squeaky clean in one sink of water. Understand, I saw that face, Ray. I washed them squeaky clean because I rinsed them with fresh water.
Yeah, but with fresh.
Because remember, they're soaking in the hot water and soap, and then you rinse them in the same side. So they're being rinsed with fresh water. The water that they're soaking in has not sat, not a portion of it sat for any more than 5 minutes. Unlike the water sitting in the pump reservoir in your dish rinser that may have sat for, thank you, yes. Yes, I've actually made a few people physically ill when they had issues with their dish rinser, and I took the pump reservoir out and they watched me scrape the sludge out. And I went, yeah, this was what was sprayed on your clean dishes, including the rinse cycle.
Oh my, I've had that happen with, that's why I'm having trouble and having to replace everything. Not only that the garbage disposal went, but I'm gonna have to replace the hose, which I got, and the piping, just extra added measure, so everything is much more smoother and everything. Because do you remember a few years ago when you had to help me with touching dishes because I wanted to every time I wanted.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have things backing up from the dishwasher and the garbage disposal, so that's why I'm changing everything.
Yeah. Which is why I, again, had to learn how to wash dishes in a very quick, orderly, clean, efficient manner. So that burned up 37 minutes of unexpected handyman information coming to you live from, yes, one of my other hats. Are we ready to move on to tonight's agenda? Came across some interesting ones. For those of you that saw my posts on Facebook, tonight's chosen agenda is awesome mistakes, success or destiny, being a better friend. And we're going to start with awesome mistakes. And this one came up because of a little factoid that I knew about a song by Bachman Turner Overdrive. You ain't seen nothing yet. Baby, you just ain't seen nothing yet. Here's something you're never gonna forget. No, you ain't seen nothing yet. That song was never ever designed or intended to be a recording. BTO, when they would go into the recording studio to set levels and get everything ready and kind of get in the groove, made it a policy, whatever, they just chose they would not jam out on something they wanted to record, because when they were going to record it, they wanted it to be fresh. The lead singer had not shown up yet, so they were just going to do their jam out, and the guitarist moved over to the lead singer's mic so that they could kind of set up the mic levels and get it a little more prepared for when the lead singer showed up. And he popped that tune off of the top of his head, making fun of one of the roadies who stuttered. It was just a freestyle jam out with him making this stuff up on the fly. Then lead singer shows up. They record all the songs that they had put together for the album. And the producer is going through listening to the recordings and everything. And he notices that there was still one track that hadn't been played. And he goes, well, what's this here? And they're like, oh, that was just a little something where that was our little jam out session. He goes, well, I want to hear it. Well, it's nothing. It's not even. He goes, no, I want to hear it. So they play it for him. And the producer goes, that's your single. And they're like, that's not even a song. He goes, no, that's your single. Well, he goes, no, that is the one. And so they said, well, fine, we'll re-record it. We'll have the lead singer do it. And he's like, no, you don't understand. That recording is your single. And Randy's like, but I'm not a singer. This was just, he goes, don't care. And it was the only #1 hit that they had. And Randy was interviewed and he goes, drove me nuts. He goes, I didn't want the spotlight. I didn't want to be the lead singer. I was the guitarist. I didn't want it. And all of a sudden we do this thing and I make this song up off the top of my head and I'm just having fun. And boom, now I've got to be a lead singer for one of our songs. How's that for an awesome mistake? Sometimes we worry so much about doing things perfectly and don't give ourselves the slack to understand that some mistakes turned out better than what we had intended. Another story that I've told, I got permission, she's heard me say it a couple of times. My amazing, beautiful wife, during the holidays, will make homemade candies. She makes caramel from scratch. She makes turtles. She makes all of these amazing things that we don't eat because we don't eat sugar or sweets, but she makes them anyway. And we'd hardly known each other. We had just started dating. And I was over at her place and she was making salted caramels. Now I'm going to preface this with, I'm a cook, my wife is a baker. The difference between cooking and baking is cooking is art and music. Baking is science. When you're baking something and it says 7.1 ounces, you do not add 7.2, you do not add 7.0, you add 7.1 ounces. When it says that it needs to be heated to 118 degrees for 9 minutes, you heat it to 118.0 degrees for 9 minutes, 0 seconds. When you're a cook like me, you look at a recipe and you go, that's a nice suggestion. And you're making something, and you're like, this could use a little bit of, and yeah, you know what? This stroganoff could use a little bit of pepper. I like mine a little bit more peppery. Yes, that's music. When you're baking and you're making caramels, you don't on the fly go, this could probably use a little bit of, well, all of a sudden I heard my wife go, oh, really? And I'm like, we weren't married at the time. And I'm like, what's the matter? She goes, I messed it up. And she was on her way to the trash can with the pan. Yep, about to dump it. And I went, well, time out. How long you been doing this? How long you been making caramels? She goes, I don't know, 10, 12 years. I went, all right. It's a lot of money in those ingredients. Fix it. It's like, you don't understand. You can't. And I'm like, you were going to throw it anyway. How many more ingredients you got left? Some salt? Well, fine. So she finished the mistake and then immediately started making another batch the correct way, in all the proper steps and all the proper heat and all the proper timing and all the proper ingredients put in at the proper time, because that's science. And the mistake was a little darker caramely color than hers, so it was easy to distinguish the two. She chopped them all up and distributed them evenly. And guess which one got voted the best? The mistake drove her nuts. I said, you just figured out how to improve them. What was a mistake? I said, and it was an awesome mistake, wasn't it? So again, not all mistakes are mistakes. Not all bad things are bad. Did you learn something? Did you keep going? Take the lessons, bring them forward. Even burning your fingers as a kid, lesson. That one you learn just like that. And you had a reminder for a couple of days, didn't you? That helped, pun intended, that helped burn that lesson into that track real well. You're like, touched red hot item, burn, bad, don't do again. So that's awesome mistakes. Any ahas, epiphanies, comments you'd like to share on that one?
I like that one. Awesome mistakes. That, or what's the other one? Things. There's another phrase, something along the lines of like, can't even think of it. But yeah, I like that one.
Cool.
Can always be fixed. Always. Fail is first initial attempt learned or something.
Yeah, but again, even with the light bulb, how many times did it take? There were lots of mistakes there, and then finally, that one worked. That was pretty awesome, huh? So there's that, and then we have one that I've got to pull up a quote, which is the funny part when we were talking about the advantage of today's technology. And I realized I couldn't see it. I couldn't find my phone. I had it buried in a pile of stuff in my office. Success or destiny, and this quote came from a book called Why We Want You to Be Rich. We all have some soul searching We all have to do some soul searching and find out what we are destined to do and be. Imagine living your life and then finding out you'd missed your own destiny in the process. I'll read that again. We all have to do some soul searching and find out what we are destined to do and be. Imagine living your life and then finding out you'd missed your own destiny in the process. President Donald Trump. That one hit me because I've known way too many people that got into the comfort zone of the work that they were in for a long time. And they look at me like I'm out of my flipping gourd because I've had 28 different professions, because I traveled, moved around, and even living in the small town when I got the realization that I'm not a very good employee. I don't always like to be told what to do or how to do if I figured out how to do it better. How dare you do it better? I told you to do it this way. We've been doing it this way for hundreds of years, and you went and did it your way, faster and better, but we don't like that. You need to do it our way. But what? What the what? And this kind of ties into the triple T I did a couple of weeks ago of profession jumping. And I'll think of her name in just a bit, but she did a talk about profession jumping, in where a number of people are afraid to grow inside of their profession or forward regardless. Back in the day, grandma and grandpa would get a job and they would stay at that job for 20, 30, 40 years, knowing that in the end, grandpa would get his gold watch and there would be a retirement nest egg and they would live happily ever after. And then that all changed. Pretty soon, grandpa got let go because they did a little readjustment, and it was, of course, 2 years before he was going to retire. No gold watch, no retirement, no nest egg. The loyalty has pretty much disappeared. And once you accept that and realize that you are now at the point where you are worth the value you bring to the time that you spend at work. People think they get paid by the hour. If that was the case, everybody would be able to make tons of money. They would just have to show up for an hour and get paid. But when we broke down the hourly rate of the CEO for Coca-Cola, and most people fell off their chair and had to pick their jaw back up and go, what? And I don't remember the exact amount, but it was something like $11,000 an hour. An hour. $11,000 an hour. Now, granted, that doesn't take into effect the work that he had to do to create the value to be worthy of being paid $11,000 for an hour. So in the success or destiny, what do you consider success, and are you en route for your destiny? Not all of us have the potential to create an environment that will allow us to make $11,000 an hour. But a vast majority of people create an environment that keeps them in the comfort zone where very little grows. And so the talk that inspired me a couple of weeks ago was where it kind of goes off of the play of an attitude that I had a long time ago of, well, I was looking for a job when I got this one. And that doesn't mean that you just keep hopping without moving upward. If you're just hopping lateral, then you probably have an issue. If you've gotten a different job every 6 months and each one of them paid $15 an hour, probably not what we're going to call advancement. But if you've changed jobs every 12 to 15 months and each job paid increasingly more with better positions, better responsibilities, that to me is climbing a success ladder. And it doesn't mean that you get the job and you immediately start looking for something better that's going to pay more. You get the job and then figure out ways to improve your value. Study on your spare time. Figure out things that can make the job better. Constantly try to improve your talents and your value. And then when you realize the amount of value you've increased yourself to, you go to your boss and go, hey boss, I've been here for 12 months or 15 months or 18 months. And in that time, I have learned how to, and I've taken on this responsibility, and I've saved the company this, and I've done this, and I've done that, without being told or asked or required. And so I've done some research, and people that bring the same value as I do are being paid 15% more than I am. I would like a raise. And if bossy boss doesn't understand the value that you've brought in or wants to play hard hand and says, yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. That's not really in the budget, but thanks for, trying. Well, then you go to the other place that you've already researched and offer your services to somebody who sees your value. Again, as long as you are moving up and moving forward. And all of a sudden, eventually, 5-6 years later, you are now making X amount more than what you were before. And you're catching on to the advantage of constantly growing, constantly learning, and constantly adding value to your abilities. And sometimes it's not always the monetary paycheck. It's the added stuff that isn't included on your W-2 or your 1099. Could be profit sharing. Could be coverage for your cell phone. Could be a company car. Could be a bunch of other things. I've known a couple of people that were brilliant enough to where the boss came to them and said, you know, you're doing a really good job. I'd like to offer you a raise. And they went, yeah, no, I don't think so. And the boss was like, and they said, the raise that you're going to give me is going to bump me into the bottom of the next tax bracket, which puts me at a tax rate of X amount, which costs me more than the raise you're going to give me. If you give me that raise that you're about to give me, it'll cost me money. I would prefer that you give me a monetary value that you can still write off as a business expense, such as a company car, pay for my cell phone, increase my medical benefits, something of that nature that doesn't affect me monetarily and cost me more after I pay my taxes on what you're offering. Does that make sense? So there's lots of different ways that you can be paid that don't include cash. Any questions, ahas, epiphanies that you'd like? Yes, Lenore.
So when you had mentioned what do you consider success and then what do you consider your destiny? If you approach it as you are the creator, how do you determine if it's your destiny or if it's something like, how are you defining destiny then? Would probably be the question.
My first gut instinct when you asked that question, did you pick it and walk that trail? Or did karma, life, source, God, whatever, bump you on a different path that all of a sudden there you are?
Okay.
I would consider that to be destiny. The fact that I'm talking to you guys right now, I think is destiny, because had I not lost my photography studio in Minnesota back in '07, I would have never ended up in Cali. I wouldn't have met Dr. David Snyder, and I wouldn't have learned the things that allow me to be here doing Triple T. That to me sounds a little more like destiny than a success pattern. So we're at the top of the hour, which those of you that have tuned into Triple T before and watched the videos know that the first hour I teach and do my thing, and the second hour is open mic, open platform. Any questions or topics or things that you would like to ask or add, this is your time.
I usually have questions. You can keep going if you'd like, or if nobody else has questions or whatever. Anybody mind? Okay. Two questions actually. When you ask somebody to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 and they say 6, which way do you go and how do you decide? Because if you go, why did you rate it lower? Okay, got it. Thank you.
Anybody want to add their spin to it, and then I'll answer afterwards? Could you repeat the question again so they can hear it one more time, please?
When you ask somebody to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, like how badly might you want to do X? And they say 7. Do you ask, why didn't you rate it higher? Or why didn't you rate it lower? Or does it matter?
Anybody want to chime in?
Any kind of question you're going to ask an employee, you want to make sure that You're getting their perspective, not why. So you're going to ask them, instead of why didn't you choose higher, you want to ask them, what's your reasoning? How do you feel this affects you? Not why, because then you're like, oh, goodness gracious. You know, you're going to get that. But if you ask, what do you feel? What is your reasoning? You're going to get a more honest answer that can come right off the bat, off the top of their head, instead of having to give a answer that's really educated so they don't feel like they're stepping on anybody's toes.
Okay. Anybody else want to? Yes, Holly.
I'm sure this is what TJ was going to say too, but so first of all, the question is, so what you want to do is you want to ask the unusual question, and because you want to get them to defend the position that you want them to defend. So it depends on what you're asking them to do. If you're saying, how much do you want to get rid of this? That's a very different question versus, sorry, I can't think of the opposite, but you know, sometimes like, how much do you hate this on a scale of 1 to 10? You know, but so
like,
let's say
how much do you want this?
Yeah, or how much do you want this? Yes, thank you. Thank you. There's another side to this. But if you're saying, you know, how much would you like to get rid of this? And they say 7, you're still always going to want to ask, why didn't you rate it lower? Because now they're having to think of all the reasons why they want to get rid of it. So if that makes any sense. Now, like I said, if it's on the flip side, you just the opposite, ask them the opposite of the direction you want it to move. If that makes sense.
Ta-da! Perfect answer. And that is the actual answer is it all depends on the intention that you want to get out of the use of the answer. Scale of 1 to 10, 10 high. How much might you want to get rid of this? And even with like David, he used to play, you know, well, a 10. Why so low? Why didn't you rate it higher? And they're like, I said 10 out of 10. Well, why didn't you give it a 12? Well, because, and then the values and criteria start to come out. And allows you to start digging deeper into the values and criteria. And well, scale of 1 to 10, 10 high, how much might you want to keep doing this? A 2. A 2, well, why didn't you rate it lower? Well, because, and again, suddenly you're getting access to values and criteria. That help? That, and it's also fun to see the look on their face when you give them the opposite spin of what they were expecting. What? Did what? So what else have we got for question?
My other question was, when you ask somebody, how do you know? I go, I feel it in my head. And they point to their head. Does that drive anybody else nuts? What else? Like, because I'll start asking them more questions, but then sometimes walls will go up and then it's like, all right, well, fine, stay stuck.
Anybody want to play with that before I do? That one boils down to people will not always believe what you tell them, but they will always believe what they deduce on their own. And so when you ask them, well, if that were to come true, how would you know? Now they're putting their own, right back to values and criteria, they're putting their own deductions and values and criteria onto their answer. They came up with it, not you. Which is why I ask so many questions and use words like might and possible and what if, what would. And it's easier to to ask those questions and allow them to paint the picture for you than to lead them. Too many people get led, and at the end, they feel led. Well, they told me what the problem was, but I don't know if they're right. And even if it was right, because you told them instead of having them come up with the answer, they will question it much more than if you allow them to come up with the answer on their own. Yep. Any questions on that? Or anybody got anything else? We still have one more topic as well, so. But I enjoy, this is your time, so I know some of you keep a whole logbook of journal of questions. So if you're getting confused, you can turn to page 37 and read the 7th question from the left side. And
Honestly. So if they're saying, and I follow you on that. Let's say they're procrastinating, and I said, okay, well, how do you know it's time to procrastinate? And they're like, I just know, it's in my head.
what might that feel like, and what would it feel like if you weren't doing that?
Okay.
Now you're contrasting the opposite and having them describe it.
So what might that feel like? And then what was the other one? What would be the opposite if you weren't doing
what's
that?
What's it like when you're not procrastinating? What does that feel like? And how do you know when you're not procrastinating?
Okay.
Oftentimes it's good to find ways to contrast the two types and have them describe it in their own words. And in doing so, they can oftentimes give you solutions or directions towards solutions, but they came up with it on their own. Yes, Holly.
I will say too, it kind of depends on what's your outcome. Once again, it all comes back to what's your outcome. Because if your goal is just to have them be able to interact with it because they're in hypnosis or whatever, you can always go to, okay, what color is it? What temperature is it? These things may not mean anything. But sometimes the goal is just to point out that they don't know.
Yep.
And maybe that's where they're getting stuck, is they haven't figured out the criteria of what this feeling feels like or how they know they have it. More on like a positive, maybe they're already successful and they just don't know it. Maybe, how do you know when you're happy? My internet connection's unstable. Sweet. Maybe they're already happy and they just don't know it. So, another thing that you could do is you could just have people, if you're trying to get them to know what it feels like, maybe have them move forward in their timeline and just say, you're in a moment when you're happy. Look around. Who are you with? What's that like? Just get them to describe the situation. I don't know. Just throw them before.
And to add to that, I had a client who's dealing with addiction to meth. And of course, that messes big time with the brain and happiness levels. And one of the comments they made was, well, I just can't find anything to make me happy anymore. I said, probably because you're referring to an old level that meth stole from you. That level is not going to be attainable for a long time because meth stole that from you. Figure out where you're at right now. And if you could add a +1 instead of a +35 where you were before, would that be happier than you are now? And when he realized that he was back in the good old days, I was very joyous. Well, yes, back in the good old days, you were 12. You weren't using meth. All your bills were paid. You didn't have kids that you were responsible for, and you hadn't met your wife yet. That was a different happiness. Having a warm cookie was the amazing part. Oh my gosh, my whole week is I got to have a cookie right out of the oven. It was just for me. Happiness 87. It's hard to attain that happiness as an adult, even today. Where are you at? What's your baseline? What does 2 levels above that look like? That's why one of the things that I give my clients for homework is I have them buy a day planner. And I tell them it doesn't have to be the big desktop corporate type with the big flop over pages, but get the one that has a page for each day. And if you got kids, absolutely teach your kids this as soon as possible. And at the end of the day, you simply pick up the day planner and you write down a minimum of 3 cool things that you remember from the day. And they don't have to be some, oh my gosh, I got to watch a baby giraffe born under a double rainbow and glitter shot on doves flew. No. It can be something as simple as walking down the sidewalk and a hummingbird goes, and for 2.1 seconds, you and that hummingbird were right there. And all of a sudden, off he goes. You never see him again, but you're like, that was cool. You write that down. And the more you do this, the more you exercise your mind to realize and see how many cool things are around you. And they always have been. Yes, every flower garden has weeds. The problem is too many people have learned to focus on the weed. There could be one thorny weed in the entire most beautiful 3 acres of flowers. And what do they see? That weed, oh my gosh. And they run up and they grab it with their hand and the thorns go in and they scream and cry. And they go, oh my gosh, look at this terrible weed that I found. And oh, look at what it does. And you smack them on the head and you stand them up straight and you go, look around. They're like, what? Where'd all these flowers come from? Well, they've been here the whole time. But what about this weed? Look at my hand. Look what it did. I got tear it out. But then it'll die. You know what? It's your weed. You can do whatever you want with it. You can fertilize it. You can water it. You can fertilize and water your flowers so that they grow higher than your weeds. It's up to you. It takes the same amount of energy. You can be happy that thorn bushes have roses, or you can be angry that rose bushes have thorns. It's the same bush. Depends on what you focus on. Hey, look at there. We got some of our favorite peeps on here. Elijah from across the water to the UK, and beautiful Fran across the water down Underland. So honored to have you guys joining us here. So anybody got any input they would like to share on that? Bueller. Yes, Ray.
You know, I've had so many people tell me, why are you always so happy? I'm not always happy. I find places where I can enjoy my life and enjoy things that come into my life. Shush, guys. Sorry. And it's just like, while I'm at work, I don't want to get on the train. That's a whole hour and a half that I have to load and tie it down. But I look forward to the accomplishment of finishing that train. That's what makes me happy. Is we got it done in an hour and a half, not 3 hours. I look for the little itty bitty accomplishments that make me happy. And I know that I did good, so it boosts myself up even more.
Yep.
You know, and don't get me wrong, I've gone through those times of great sorrow, great depression, but I've learned to find ways to dig myself out of that by finding the smallest little happiest thing I know that makes me happy. Seeing smile or smiling for somebody else, or, you know, to get a reaction out of somebody that you know, makes me smile too. I love making people laugh, which makes me laugh. And
Yep. Yeah. And watch your posture. Our physiology affects our psychology way more than I ever imagined. So thank you for sharing that. And I had a squirrel run across the road and I didn't grab it in time. So if it comes back around, I'll show it to you. And for those of you that are watching the recording for the first time, no, I don't have squirrels in my house. It's just a little expression that I share with people. Squirrel! Any other questions? We've got a little over a half hour left. If you guys have any questions or topics that you would like to ask, we also have one more topic left on the 3 that I posted. It's up to you. Gotta go, Ray? Thank you for joining us. We missed your happy, smiling face. Hope to see you more often. Have a wonderful week. Bye. So are we moving on to the last topic of being a better friend? This one comes down to basically self-talk. And I think I had a quote on here. Well, I'm not sure if this was the quote that inspired it or not, but I'm going to read it anyway, by David Bailey. We live in deeds, not years, in thoughts, not breaths, in feelings, not in figures on a dial. We should count time by heartthrobs. He most lives who thinks most, feels the noblest, acts the best. As always, I will read it again. We live in deeds, not years, in thoughts, not breaths, in feelings, not in figures on a dial. We should count time by heartthrobs. He most lives who thinks most, feels the noblest, acts the best. And one of the spins on that with being a better friend is when you're building your tribe, what kind of friend would you want? And are you reflecting that to the people you're friends with? It's amazing how we can watch somebody out in public or whatever, or be around people and go, oh, they're so amazing. I just wish that I was more like them. So what's holding you back? What's different? We all have the capabilities, especially if we can act it out. But who's the hardest on us? Who do we allow to say things to us that nobody else gets to say? Well, of course, it's the person that we live with our entire life, from conception all the way to end of days. Raise your hand if you know who I'm talking about. Uh-huh. Self-talk. And the scary part is when we become comfortable and complacent with saying things to and about ourselves, that if we heard somebody say it to us or about us, would cause a reaction, and not in the favorable. Some of the things that I've heard people say about themselves in limiting beliefs and down talk and all sorts of nasty things, the more you are aware of it, the more you hear it. And the more you hear it, the more you become aware of it. And those that have been around me in my presence or live, whatever, have often heard me go, did you just say that? No, really, did you just say that about yourself? And of course, they give you that little grin. I'm like, what? Yeah, you caught me. I'm like, no, seriously. And it'd be one thing if it was some drunk, homeless meth head on the street who said it to you as you were walking by. But if you heard somebody that you respect, admired, and loved had said the same thing about you, how would that hit you? How would that affect you? And how long would you think about what you had heard? So I'm asking all of you not only to keep a close ear on what you say to yourself and what you allow your thoughts to say about yourself, but don't be afraid to call out others on what you hear them saying about themselves. Because you'll be amazed at the amount of people that say it without even realizing they've said it. which is why I so often are like, did you just say that? And they're like, what? What'd you just say? I don't know. You said you were so stupid. Yes, Fran.
Well, it affects so much how much we're able to achieve our self-talk and what other people say to us and what we pick up, because again, our ears are tuned to hearing the not so positive thoughts. And people who hear expectations and beliefs that you're capable of doing something, you are. It really affects how we perform, how happy we are, just by our self-talk and other people's talk regarding us and what we choose to hear. Language is very important.
Absolutely.
And we just don't realize how important we think we're being modest and self-deprecating, but in fact, we're doing ourselves a terrible disservice.
Yes, you're
When
right, Elijah. Talk is cheap.
Yeah, talk is very cheap.
But
And
I want
we
to
don't,
add something
we
to
don't
that.
listen to ourselves.
Yeah. I want to add something to that. Talk is cheap, but it's also very valuable. The amount of power that you have in a compliment and an uplifting comment can be extremely valuable. Why would it be any, yes, it's the double-edged sword of language, you're right, Elijah. But why would it be any less valuable to ourselves? Which is why I teach my clients also victory pose. Have fun with it. Oh my goodness gracious. Anytime, anywhere, any way you can get away with it. I do this in people that hang around me know. I don't just do this on Triple T. Anytime people give me anything to celebrate, yay! I do it in public. And the cool part about it, not only does it affect you, yourself, it affects anybody that witnesses it. Proven. They don't even have to know what it is. Yes, Fran?
I was going to say, one time, just for fun, I set myself a challenge that I would, when I was walking about in the street, that I would notice interesting, good things about people and pluck up my courage and go up to strangers and say, gee, your shoes are fantastic, or it's just some silly little comment. And you could see them light up, and seeing them light up, it lit me up.
Yes.
So I've got to have the habit of it now, but it's a really handy thing to do. And just in casual conversations, just making a little comment like that just lifts the energy.
Thank you so much for adding, for expressing that, because you are so right. And it doesn't have to be some extravagant compliment. In fact, unfortunately, as a male, I've learned that a lot of times to give women compliments, I have to do it on the pass-by fly. So they don't think that I'm hitting on them. It's just like, if I see some lady with really beautiful hair, and I'll just be walking by and go, wow, great hair, and keep walking, so that they don't feel like it's like, hey baby, nice hair.
That's a very good point, TJ. Yeah. Can I butt in and say that
Please.
that me giving myself that challenge came from somebody challenging me. If you find somebody who you can't find anything you like about them. You really don't like them. Just look for the smallest thing, even if it's you like their shoelaces. Make a pleasant comment on that, and you'll start to see more things you like about the person. Once you start getting in that mindset of trying to notice good things about people.
Yes. And Elijah shared with us, they discovered that even people who are blind from birth do the victory pose when they win at something. It's a natural expression of achievement. That's why everyone knows it when they see it, even if you don't know what's being celebrated. And to add to that, even animals in the wild do it. That's how universal that pose is. Chimps, what do they do when they accomplish something? There's enough of it out there that prove it's wired into the world.
Actually, it is with quadrupeds as well, to a degree, that,
Yes.
you know, they will prance. And
Yes.
that's, I guess, an equivalent.
Exactly. We have the victory pose, the victory dance, the celebration dance is so prevalent everywhere, especially when you start to look at it. And even if it's a different species, it affects those that witness it. Watch a dog when something's cool and you're like, yes, ah! The dog's like, ooh, good time. Do I get a treat? All right, I'm happy now. This is good. And just the reverse. You watch a dog figure out something and it does a happy jump. I did it, I did it, I did it, I did it. And if you're walking by and you don't even know what they did, you just know that you recognize dog accomplished something and is happy. You get that energy. So there are so many different ways that we can go around not only affecting ourselves by watching self-talk, but affecting others simply by allowing them to witness our energy, our celebration, our discipline, if you want to call it. And like Fran pointed out so well, it can be the smallest detail. There's something there, some way, somehow, there will be something there worth noticing, worth celebrating, even worth commenting on. People don't always remember what you said to them or what you did for them, but they will remember how you made them feel. That brings us to 38 minis past the hour. Anybody got anything else that they would like to share or bring up or questions for the group? Yes.
I have a question. I don't know if you guys know how to do this. How do you raise your body temperature so that you get warm faster? Thoughts, feelings, emotions, reactions, anything's appreciated. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I think you have to think it first and believe it, and persuade yourself that you believe it, and allow yourself to notice the changes as they're happening.
Elijah once said, like, when did you decide that? Yeah, I know you heard it. When did you decide that you were cold? And that decision shift, but it's
well, your body temperature doesn't actually rise, does it?
I don't care what it is. I shiver and
Body
shake.
temperature actually rose like 1 degree, 2 degrees, you'd be sick.
Yes.
You'd have a fever, right?
But how do you break the chills?
Well, when did you decide you had the chills?
Exactly. I mean, no.
And when don't you do it? When you don't. So you don't always have the chills, right?
Yes.
So
True.
how don't you have them when you don't have them?
Okay. How
Now-
don't I have them? Yeah. No.
Thinking about it. I mean, when you think about it, when you don't have them, how do you do that?
I don't know how I do that.
That's right. But a deeper part of you does know,
Okay.
right?
Right.
When you don't have the chills, and that deeper part of you knows how to not do it because you're warming up to this idea that in that moment you were deciding something else, were you not?
Agreed.
And how is that different from how you were when you had chills?
Can't even follow it.
So, right. How do you feel right now?
I'm warmer. Thank you.
It's strange, isn't it?
Yes, but I don't understand how.
But you don't need to know how.
I do.
You don't.
We met.
Think about this, right? You don't need to know how an electrical circuit works in order to flip a light switch. Now, you don't need to know how an internal combustion engine works to drive a car.
Yes, true.
So you don't need to know how your body regulates your temperature to make you feel warm. You just have to know that you can feel warm anytime you want. Right? Now, as you consider all of that,
I've
what
memorized.
happens in this area?
Well, that area was warm. It was my back that was cold. So
Okay.
now it's warmer.
And how did you notice that happening?
Because you were linguisting me into a tunnel.
That's a great new word. I'm going to add that to the dictionary. You linguistified me. So did you notice that the part here that was warm actually spread elsewhere?
Yes.
How did it do that?
I don't know, but I don't know
if
how.
that warm feeling that you had would get even warmer first, or if it would move to another part of your body before it did so, or if you would just be more aware of it now. That's right.
Now I have to rewind a minute. 1 hour and 45.
All it is, I'll tell you now in 2 words what it is that I did, right? Shifting attention. That's all it is. Because before you were focusing on the cold, and now you're not. Now you're focusing on what's not cold. Right? That's all it is. But you have to kind of pace. It's a little bit more difficult. Some people find it can be more difficult to do it to yourself because you're already in the state of feeling cold, right? However, I don't think that it's actually more difficult to do it to yourself. It's about, from the way I do it, and Fran, I will let you speak. I'm sorry, I know I'm hogging it, right? But it's about, you know what mindfulness is, right? You know, like when you try and meditate, you become like the observer. So it's like kind of stepping out of yourself, the you that's cold, and observing and noticing what else is happening and shifting your attention that way. It's almost as if you separate, like it's a dissociation of self and then a noticing of all the other parts of you that are not cold, and warming up to those ideas. And you can linguistify yourself a little bit if you want as well, if it helps you, you know. But it was just shifting attention. That's what the language did.
And following on from Elijah, just showing you the how. If you feel that warm place and think of people that make you feel warm, thinking of love, people you love, it makes you feel warm inside. Even if it's puppies and kittens or whatever, and just feel that warmth. Notice where it is, and just allow that feeling to intensify and spread all the way out from the inside, round to your back, surrounding you, and allow that temperature to rise. And if you want to make it really hot, just allow it. And once you've got that location and that feeling, all you do is allow it to spread, and you can intensify it. And, you know, like Elijah was saying, it's where you put your attention. And if you have the intention to allow that, it will happen.
If you go back to basics, right? Absorption and focus. Like you can like I could say my attention is there, but it's not. Even though I'm looking there, my real attention is here on the call, right? So like, is it an empty word, attention, intention, or are you actually getting absorbed into it? Are you actually narrowing your focus into it? Are you actually, do you know what I mean? It's like when you say affirmation. If you say affirmation that's just flat, it's different from saying affirmation where you get into the emotion of the affirmation and what it means to you, right? It's like yeah. It's the toothpick, isn't it? It's the toothpick.
Also, pay attention to your breathing. How do you breathe when you're cold? A lot of people that complain they're cold, how are they breathing? Shallow, light. And if you can focus on what it would be like to stoke the fire inside, anybody that's had to build a fire from scratch knows that you have to breathe into it.
There are various meditative processes where you actually go out into the snow and melt the snow deliberately, because you can do it. It's just a matter of focus and attention, like Elijah was saying.
Yep.
And noticing that feeling spreading, and noticing your body just gently increasing its temperature. And feeling the comfort of it is really good.
We also had a comment about Wim Hof, the Iceman, train your body to be warm. Then those of us that grew up in Minnesota and the northern regions where it gets a little chillish, realize that the coldest part of winter is when? The front side of winter. Because on the front side of winter, 40 degrees, flippin' sucks. Backside of winter, 40 degrees is a tank top and shorts, sweeping the slush off the sidewalk, going, it is a beautiful day. Check this out. Think I'm going to get a tan.
And I've noticed moving from continent to continent that it takes about 3 weeks for your internal body temperature to adjust to the new environment, whether it be hot or cold.
Correct.
And certainly that's my experience of it. Other people may do it faster, but it takes me about 3 weeks.
Also, the perceived temperature of the environment. You can look outside, and if it's a nice sunny day, even though it's 65 degrees, people are like, oh, but it's because of the sun. Well, even if you're working in the shade on a nice, bright, sunny day, 65 degrees doesn't feel the same as it does when it's 65 and overcast. Even if the humidity or all of the conditions are the same except for the amount of sunlight, the perceived warmth in there. And then, of course, activity. Pops used to say, if you're cold, get up and move around. Vacuum the house. Dang it. So, squirrel, all the above. Did we confuse you enough on that? I mean, did we clarify that up for you?
And what's your body temperature like now?
I think it's an energetic shed. Because I'm pretty cold right now. So.
Here's another question for you. What is a thought process, situation, or condition that makes your body temperature rise, possibly creating sweat?
Like an activity?
Yes, or a thought process. You ever had to sit and be next in line to have to go up in front of a crowd and speak?
That usually doesn't make me sweat. No. Running is the first one that came up.
And when you think about the condition that you're in, how you breathe and all the above,
Mm-hmm.
what condition does that, what does that do to your body?
Yeah, it warms it up for sure.
There's also other energies that we may not always consider to be useful, like anger. Anger would be a survival energy to use when needed. If you were caught in a situation where it's flipping cold and you're starting to shake uncontrollably, could you bring up an event or something that absolutely enrages you and use that energy to get your heartbeat back up and stoke that fire inside?
Or more pleasantly, maybe we could all focus on Lenora and heat her up with warm, comfortable love. Now, wouldn't that be nice?
Uh-huh.
With everybody's attention on her, loving her, making her feel warm and wrapped.
Holly.
I've had a couple thoughts. So first of all, I'd say sometimes I think we get focused on what is really the symptom of something else. Of course, my internet connection always goes unstable every time I talk. I mean, another question is, the old tried, true, faithful. Have you tried spinning it? Have you tried magic framing it? Is there something behind, especially if it's a pattern? And then just, a couple, I know we've talked a lot about, changing your attention and all that sort of thing. But what TJ likes to ask about, what else could it be? Because one of the things I was thinking about is a lot of times when you're feeling cold, is really anxiety, at least in my experience. And sometimes it could be the other way too. Like anxiety could also be overheating, which is where I tend to take it. Because the first thing that came into my mind was just a story about on the Titanic. They say that, most people die from hypothermia, not from drowning. And I don't know if it could be an old wives' tale, but I was told that apparently the ship's cook knew they were going down, they weren't getting off, and so drank a whole bunch of the alcohol that was around. And because he wasn't fighting against the cold, he ended up surviving, and the hypothermia didn't get him because he just allowed himself to relax into it. And I was just thinking how similar that is to anxiety. Just a total random thing that popped into my head. It may have nothing to do with anything. The other
That's the
story
correct
that
answer. That's the other correct answer. Just take a shot.
So what
Bam.
else could it be? What else could it be? So if I were to ask that question, well, I'll let TJ do it because he's so good at it. Or if he wants to take the lead.
Well, and that also, another squirrel, the amount of mind over matter on that. You know, I think I told the story a couple of weeks ago on Triple T about the guy who accidentally got locked into a cooling car on the train, a freezer car that he was working on, and couldn't get out. And he was writing on the walls about how cold it was, and you know how much he loved his wife and all this stuff, and it's getting colder. I can't feel my finger. Da 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 da. And the next morning they found him in the car, dead. The only problem was the cooling unit was non-operational. They found him in a 75-degree car. He thought he was freezing to death. And as such, he did. And it was all transcribed on the walls of the car. And probably because it was, they could, if I remember right, they could see that, they could tell that he didn't have light to go by because of the way it was scribbled and everything. He was just writing, or he would have probably been able to notice that he couldn't see his breath. Power of our mind. And that leaves us with 4 minis left. Any ahas, epiphanies, takeaways, quick questions that we have to fill up the last 4 minutes? I've got a couple more quotes I could read for you guys and see what you think. Here's a question for you. What's the difference between can and cannot? 3 letters. What's the difference between can and cannot? 3 letters. And a mindset. Here's one. Defeat may serve as well as victory to shake the soul and let the glory out. By Edwin Markham. And I'll read it again. Defeat may serve as well as victory to shake the soul and let the glory out. How many times have we taken a defeat and instead of letting it hold us down, we went, that's the last time that'll happen.
It's kind of a wordplay with defeat and moving and as in the feet.
Yeah.
Because you could play with that phrasing a bit more.
Sometimes rock bottom has turned around more people than all their victories. When have people done what has happened to a number of people that caused them to completely change their life around for the better? Near-death experience. Those people that have gotten to that point of near-death experience or died and were brought back from death. Talk about a reevaluation of life going, all right, I've been doing this all wrong. I'm doing it different. And how sad is it that we have to get to a point of almost being taken out of the game before we realize how much better we want to play the game.
And we only got one shot at it in this lifetime anyway.
Yes, yes.
You may as well play for real.
There's no reset button on this one. Otherwise, I know a lot of people that would be on that thing like a sugar addict on free cake. Like, oh, that sucked, reset. Yeah, that didn't work out, reset.
Actually, I had a look at that yesterday while I was driving and thinking, well, if I actually did have the opportunity to undo the mistakes that I've done, would I? And when I actually look at it, maybe I'd leave it the same, even though there were not great consequences from some of the mistakes, but it actually guided my life in a particular way. The mistakes, I learned stuff from it. Would I have actually made a different choice if I'd got that opportunity again under those circumstances? And, you know, if you went back to where you were, the circumstances, the options, would you really do it different?
Let me ask you a question then, my dear Fran. When you look back now, are they properly labeled as mistakes, or are they more unexpected change of direction and events that weren't as easy as some others?
Well, they were uncomfortable situations brought about by my own decisions.
Yes.
And the consequences I had to pay for making that choice. And, you know, I mean, nobody wants to feel discomfort, pain, humiliation, embarrassment, whatever. But did it actually do something good for you as well?
Yes.
So reviewing back to what we've labeled, like you said, as mistakes,
Yep.
were they really mistakes? Were those terrible events that you think, oh, it wasn't me, I didn't do that? Was it really something that didn't have a whole load of blessings in it somewhere, even if you can't put your finger on them? They've made you who you are today.
Yep. That's why I tell everybody the phrase, you did the best you could at the time with the tools, the knowledge, and the energy that you had available to you. If you could have done better, you would have. But regardless, the fact that we can have this conversation right now at this very second in time means that you have survived 100% of everything life has ever thrown at you. There is not a single thing, not one single thing from your past that you are not stronger than.
And Lenora, you got me thinking about hot, so I'm now really hot. I'm going to have to take my jumper off.
Hey, while we're all enjoying that thought, I'm going to say it's 2 after the hour, which means, as my promise to all that watch this, I want to respect your time, because time, as I've said, is the only thing I cannot give you, as much as I would love to. So your choice to share that valuable value commodity with me and with all the people that are watching this makes me feel very blessed. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate every single one of you. I hope to see you back here in 7. Blessings on you all. Do me a favor and go out and enjoy life and be nice to people. See you in 7.